Hello and welcome to episode 136 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, my good friend Sarah Says is joining us again to talk about the West Coast. After a few months away from the podcast, Sarah returned in August to play our game Fact or Figment about Disney's California Adventure. We took commonly held opinions about the theme park and decided if we thought they were facts or figments. Well, now we're going to do the same thing for Anaheim's other Disney park, Walt's original park, Disneyland. We are definitely going to have a lot of fun in this one. Before we get started, do me a favor. If you're enjoying us on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. It only takes a second, but it really does help us a lot. We have continued to grow over the past 2.5 years, but we don't want to take our foot off the gas. Let's continue to grow. Right now, it's time to get to our main topic. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
I'm happy to be back.
After a long gap where you had a bunch of busy stuff going on in your life and you weren't on the show, we recently had you on to do Fact or Figment, Disney's California Adventure Edition. Anybody who doesn't know what we mean by Fact or Figment, it is a segment where I will state something that is a commonly held belief in the Disney community, and we will decide whether it is a fact or a figment. We did Disney's California Adventure last time. Today we are going to move across the Esplanade. First time. Said it correctly, pronounced it correctly the first time. And we are going to move across the Esplanade to Disneyland Park. And we are going to answer these questions, these commonly held views about Disneyland Park, and say whether we think they are facts or figments. So here we go, Sarah.
All right, I'm excited. Let's do this.
Fact or figment? Tiana's Bayou Adventure will be a great change and will actually make more sense theming-wise with New Orleans Square so close.
I don't even need to hesitate on this one. It is fact. Absolutely fact. And I feel like also they should take out the, no offense to Winnie the Pooh, but Critter Country is not Critter Country anymore because it's only Pooh Bear. Poor guy. So they should just make that all Tiana. As many people know, she is one of my top 2 princesses. And I'm so excited. I think it's going to be an amazing positive change for that area of the park. And because New Orleans Square is right there, it is a perfect fit.
Of course, I think this is a fact. I think it's starting to shape out to actually be even more of a fact over at Walt Disney World, where it looks like, I mean, we don't know all of the details yet, and they're going to keep coming in over the next year and a half. But it looks like that area might be making more changes than just Tiana's Bayou Adventure. But I think this was needed. Anybody who has ridden Splash Mountain within the last couple years, it's been falling apart, basically. You need a new injection. Forget about all the problematic nature of Song of the South. Nobody has seen it. It's not something that is going to draw a lot of people because nobody knows that IP. The people who know the IP, if you know that IP, you're going to Disney theme parks anyway, so who cares?
Right.
This is something that is a very, very good change. It is going to bring in people. It's going to be good for families who have kids who love Tiana. You can't have too much.
Those little princesses.
You can't have too much Disney princess stuff happening throughout the parks. And to not just have Disney princesses crammed in Fantasyland, to start having them going more throughout the parks. So, yeah, this is a win-win. That is a fact.
And also, from what I've seen, some of the new animatronics they're going to put on that ride are going to be so good. They are going to be so good. So I am stoked for this one.
Absolutely. And whenever Disney adds something new, it completely changes the dynamics throughout the theme park. So now
Yep.
Rise of the Resistance is going to have lower wait times, and it's
Yes.
going to be easier to get on Peter Pan's Flight, and it's going to be
Maybe.
easier to get on Space Mountain. The
Yeah.
more you
Yeah, no,
have
I agree.
people drifting towards this ride, the more pressure you take off some of the other rides, and that is going to be a big, big positive. And correct me if I'm wrong, you've spent more time at Disneyland, but I don't think Splash Mountain was even as much of a draw at Disneyland as it was at Walt Disney World, because it doesn't get as hot at Disneyland.
Absolutely, and that is when I found in my time at Disneyland is the times the waits were really high for Splash Mountain is on very hot days. And that's when people, because they want to cool off and they want to go on this log ride. And I mean, until recently when it was about to close. So, of course, the wait times picked up because people wanted to ride it again before it closed forever. But yeah, the biggest wait times I always saw were on very hot days. If it was a cold day, man, you could put on a poncho and you could ride that ride forever.
All right, fact or figment? Disney needs to get rid of Finding Nemo's submarine journey because that space could be better utilized for a Fantasyland expansion.
Well, I say fact on getting rid of Finding Nemo's submarine journey because, like, I loved the submarines as a kid. It wasn't Nemo when I was a kid, of course, because it was many, many years ago. But I've ridden the submarine journey. But since the pandemic, I'm just like, I don't want to get in a tin can with a bunch of other people. But at the same time, it's like, I know kids love it, but I feel like, yes, it could be the space could be utilized for something better. Not gonna lie, I feel like it should be Autopia that gets the boot, but I think that is fact in my humble opinion.
Stop looking at my notes here, Sarah. So I never got to experience either version of the submarine experience at Disneyland. I did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in Walt Disney World, and I never really thought it was worth the amount of space, which is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the footprint for the ride could be better utilized in other ways. Also, like you said, with the pandemic, I thought this was gone for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I am so surprised this ever returned. And especially at Disneyland, where they were taking the pandemic seriously in California. Like, it really doesn't seem like something that I expected to return. My favorite story comes from, and I'm assuming this is true, I've heard it a few different times, that Michael Eisner really wanted to keep 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He thought it was iconic. It was a favorite ride of his. It had that nostalgia factor for him. So he went to ride it one time, and the cast members on the ride specifically conspired to give him the leakiest, oldest, smelliest submarine so he would ride it and get it through his thick skull that they had to get rid of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I mean, this is such a hit or miss experience because if you have something like a kid getting sick on this ride, if you're stuck next to somebody who forgot to travel with their deodorant, if you're dealing with any of these problems, this ride is miserable to you. And Fantasyland is so crammed right now. They have gotten every inch. They have used it to perfection. If you could expand here and throw in some Anna and Elsa, some Beauty and the Beast, Rapunzel, like there are popular princesses that would bring people to Disneyland on a vacation, which is what the company wants, more vacationers at Disneyland. If you build a small Arendelle back there, it's going to be lines all the way to Main Street, USA. Like, it just makes so much sense.
Well, and it's in such an odd space. That and Autopia are in the weirdest spot because it's not Fantasyland, but it's not Tomorrowland. It's just there. It's a place where you can see from the monorail. Super cool. But at the same time, it's just in a weird space that does not fit into any land. So why not take it out and make it part of a land so it is more cohesive as well?
One day, Disney just decided that Pixar meant tomorrow. And they could fit any Pixar property into Tomorrowland and nobody would question it.
No, of course not.
Sarah, fact or figment? It is time for Disney to rip off the Band-Aid and completely overhaul Tomorrowland. See, this is a tough one for you because
this is a tough one
you are planning a trip soon and you are not going to want to be there when this happens. This is such a balancing act for Disney because I'm going to answer before you. Okay. It is a fact that Disney has to overhaul Tomorrowland. This is outdated. There's still a people mover track that is not being used, that is or usable at all, that is just there for no reason. This land does not scream tomorrow. Nope. The Autopia cars stink. They smell bad. It's not that great of a ride. I know that sometimes kids love it, but you can build something there that kids will love even more than Autopia. This overhaul needs to happen. Now, if I put my Bob Iger hat on for a minute and I think I'm running the Disney company and I have to be the one who says we're just blowing up Tomorrowland and the whole right side of the park is going to be inoperable. There's going to be like one long hallway in between construction walls to get you back to Space Mountain. And that's it. That's a hard decision to make. That's a hard thing to okay. But they did it with Epcot. We have been dealing with construction in Epcot for years. Yes, Walt Disney World has 4 parks compared to 2, so it is a much different thing. But for the amount that you have to pay for a Magic Key to go to Disneyland, and for the amount that you have to pay for a Disneyland experience, to have one of the lands be in such complete and total disrepair, you gotta fix this. And any problems that are caused by the time that Tomorrowland isn't operational at full capacity will be made up by how in demand Tomorrowland will be when the new one opens.
Yeah, this one's tough for me because I was there when the new Tomorrowland opened the first time. And it wasn't much better. It really wasn't much better. They changed where the rocket ride was. It used to be elevated like Disney World, and now it's on the ground at the entrance, which I mean gives it kind of a cool view if you're in the right spot for photos and things like that.
I hate Astro Orbiter being there. I think that's one of the things that I would change very first thing.
Got rid of it where it was, where as a kid, it was up above, and that's where I wrote it, and they thought they had this cool new thing with rocket rods, which broke down all the time and destroyed the people mover track. And it's just, so part of me, like, it's like Figment, because I don't have a lot of hope that it would be any better, because I saw what happened the first time they did it and it wasn't that much better. Aesthetically, it was beautiful for a while and then it started to fall apart again. So I'm really torn on this one because fact, it needs to be done, but Figment, because I don't have a lot of faith that it would be done well unless they took a super, super long time to do it.
And I'm going to throw this in there. I know that one of the concerns to overhauling Tomorrowland would be that you would have all of those people who are normally in Tomorrowland and now they have no place to go because it's under construction. But with the exception of Space Mountain, which, like we said, you would have to go through a long stretch of construction walls to get back to Space Mountain. And I think they would have to keep Space Mountain open during any kind of refurb. But Star Tours, Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, obviously the Astro Orbiter, those are all fairly accessible from Main Street. So I think you could do it in a way where people could still be riding those rides while you're
Right.
fixing the back section of
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrowland. I think that there is a way they can do this if they do it intelligently, where you're not really hurting your guest flow too much. But this has to happen because Tomorrowland isn't really even worth it, with the exception of Space Mountain.
People are really just using it at this point. I mean, when we were there, I went back before I left to catch my flight and did a single rider for Space Mountain. And literally, it's people sit there for shade because there's shade under the old people mover tracks, or otherwise they're just moving back and forth to Space Mountain or to like the other rides because there's shade in those areas. But ultimately, it's not like Fantasyland or New Orleans Square where people are there like, oh, this is so cool and look at all this cool stuff I can look at. It's literally a way to get from point A to point B at this point, and that is either to a ride or back over to Fantasyland, because there's that whole show building in the back that used to be the Carousel of Progress that then became some Microsoft, I believe it was Microsoft building, that it was like a home of the future, and then it was the Star Wars launch bay, and then it was like, now it's empty as far as I know. I mean, I don't know if they ever opened Star Wars launch bay back up after the pandemic and opening Galaxy's Edge, but it's literally this building that's been abandoned back there, and everyone walks by and goes, what's in there? I'm like, nothing. There's nothing in there.
Tomorrowland is a problem in Disneyland. It's starting to be less of a problem with Tron in Walt Disney World, but I still think it's even a problem in Walt Disney World. There is a Tomorrowland problem that Disney has to find a way to address, because it's going to keep being an issue in all of the parks that have any sort of futuristic land in them, that this is going to continue to happen. Fact or figment? Disneyland's version of Fantasmic, when operating, is the best nighttime spectacular at any U.S. Disney theme park. Fact or figment?
Of any nighttime is spectacular? Like, we're talking about World of Color, or are we just comparing this to Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios?
No, that would be
any.
a very bad one, because that would obviously be, yes, the Disneyland version is better.
Because I'm like, that's a fact. World of Color, and then what other nighttime spectaculars are there? Are we talking about like fireworks too?
So we're comparing it to World of Color over at Disney's California Adventure. We are comparing it to Happily Ever After at Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. We are comparing it to Disneyland's fireworks.
Okay.
Epcot Forever, which it's obviously going to beat that one fairly easily. And since they decided that Disney's Animal Kingdom will not stay open past 7 o'clock, we're not going to worry about that.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios as well. So is the Fantasmic version at Disneyland better than all of those other nighttime spectaculars?
Ooh, that's tough, because I love Fantasmic at Disneyland. I love it. But ultimately, I'm going to say Figment, because World of Color is amazing and wonderful. And a lot of the fireworks shows I've been to are absolutely outstanding and wonderful. I know a lot of people have a lot of hate for certain unnamed fireworks shows, like ones in Disneyland. But I'm going to have to say Figment, because I feel like there are some absolutely outstanding nighttime shows that give you a different experience. If we were just going off Fantasmics, I would say Fact, but I'm going to have to say Figment, in my opinion, because I have seen some really amazing nighttime shows.
So I think my answer could change depending on what day I'm answering this question. But right now, I'm going to say Figment. And just because I do really have a special place in my heart for Happily Ever After at Magic Kingdom. And Magic Kingdom is the most visited theme park in the world. And I think that is an experience that so many people have had now over the past however many years, without talking about the time where there was that gap for the 50th anniversary where they had, I can't even remember the name of the show anymore. It was that forgettable. Enchantment, I think.
Yeah.
That I think it's so much in the zeitgeist, in the ether around the
Yeah.
theme park community. That iconic moment of Tinkerbell coming out. Sometimes you don't know if she's going to do it because of the weather, and then it happens during the show, and you just get so excited. I love Phantasmic, and I know the Disneyland version is head and shoulders above the one at Disney's Hollywood Studios. However, it's also hard to get a spot for the one at Disneyland. So when you put into consideration everything that goes around seeing it, yes, people line up for Happily Ever After 2 hours before the show starts, but you can be further back on Main Street, USA, see the projections on Main Street, and get there 15 minutes before it starts, depending on how busy it is that day. So I am going to say this is a Figment, but if you asked me tomorrow, I might say it was a fact.
Fair. Very fair.
Fact or Figment? Disney ruined a classic by retheming Snow White's Scary Adventure to Snow White's Enchanted Wish.
And I can answer this because I've written that.
Snow White's Enchanted Wish is the first ride in any theme park that Sarah and I rode together.
It is.
A little podcast trivia for you.
I know. If we're ever doing podcast trivia, keep that one in the back of your brain. I'm going to say Figment because that ride needed an update bad. And it changed, but I don't feel, having ridden Snow White's Scary Adventures my whole life, until I was an adult, I don't feel that they changed it so much that it ruined the ride at all. I think that I liked it. I thought it was really good. So I'm going to say Figment. I don't think they ruined it. I think the update was good. I think it made it fun. It brought everything up. You still have the scary moments, but I also think it added a lot of new elements that were really fun to that ride.
I will scream from the mountaintops that this is a Figment. First of all, there are rides like Space Mountain, Matterhorn, Indiana Jones. Tiana's Bayou Adventure will still have a drop. There's Big Thunder Mountain has exciting, thrilling, scary moments. There are enough areas where a kid can be a little bit scared. Haunted Mansion, for the love of all things holy. Like, there are enough slightly scary experiences throughout Disneyland Park that I think these Fantasyland dark rides, I mean, there's one right across the way that sends you to hell.
Yep. Hey, Mr. Toad.
We don't need all of these rides to be scary, and we need more accessibility. We often talk about kids, but I would also say to like the grandmas that just want fun, happy, dark rides in Fantasyland. I understand there's a lot of nostalgia surrounding Snow White's Scary Adventure, but I think this was an amazing change. Not only do I think it wasn't a bad move, I think it was the right move. And we need more stuff like this that doesn't have a 2-hour wait, that can be accessible to everybody. Everybody who goes to Disneyland is going to know that character. So why make a ride about that character not accessible to everybody? Why have to wonder if your 4-year-old daughter is going to get scared on that ride? You should have some things that just, you can pop on it. It's going to be silly. It's going to be dopey, if you will. And you can just get on and off and not have any drama.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to have one more fact or Figment for this episode, and then we are going to return at some point in the future with a hodgepodge of Disneyland and DCA fact or Figments. But I think this one is going to spark a little bit of a conversation, or at least you're going to have to think about it for a minute.
Okay.
Indiana Jones Adventure is the best ride at Disneyland Park?
Ooh, right for the
Not
jugular.
your favorite. I'm
The
talking best.
ride. Oh man, but then there's Rise of the Resistance.
Well, that's what's going to make it a tough call.
Ah, that is so rough because they also just updated Indy too. So, oh my gosh, the best ride. But which breaks down more is kind of where my brain's going right now. Is
Well, then
which
Rise of the
breaks down
Resistance will break
what
down a lot. Yes,
will
that
that
is.
and will I have to worry about B mode, or will I always know Indy is standing there with the boulder at the end saying one of his little snarky comments? Oh, this is really hard. The best ride. Is it the best ride?
So
Oh
I
gosh.
understand that we think right now we're having the argument between Star Wars Rise of the Resistance and Indiana
Right.
Jones Adventure. But
That's just in
let's
my brain.
keep in mind that there is Haunted Mansion, there's
Yep.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep.
These are prime rides, absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful rides. The version of Space Mountain at Disneyland is so much better than the one at
So
Walt Disney World.
so much better. It's hard because I'm like, in my brain, what I'm thinking is, while I'm like rationalizing this in my head right now, is how do I feel going through the queue? How do I feel on the ride? And how do I feel when I get off the ride? Those are my three things of this right now, because when I get in line for Indy, I'm so excited. When I walk by Indy, I'm so excited. When I go through the queue, I love it because it's nostalgic to me. When I get on the ride, I'm so excited, especially if I get seated right at that freaking steering wheel. And when I get up, while I'm on the ride, I'm just like, I have tons of energy and like, I love it. And when I get off the ride, I'm super excited still. And I'm thinking with that based on all the other rides in Disneyland. And it's so hard for me because there are so many good rides. For me personally, I am going to have to say it's hard too, because you're like, don't pick your favorite. And I'm like, well, Haunted Mansion's also my favorite. And I love the Haunted Mansion so much. And I love Pirates and but oh, this is literally killing me.
So I'm going to say something here. I rode
Okay.
this for the first time with Sarah, and
Yeah.
we're in the queue, and Sarah is telling me this ride is going to be so good. You're going to love this ride. You're going to love this ride.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me on the show Cheers. After years and years of them flirting with each other, Sam flirting with Rebecca, they finally hook up, and Sam compared it to seeing the movie Bad News Bears. And he said how everybody was telling him that the movie Bad News Bears was going to be so good. And then when he saw it, he was like, I mean, it was okay. Like, it was good, but it wasn't great. So now I compare things to Bad News Bears if people hype it to me. But you hyped this to me, and it ended up being just as good as you told me. Like, it is so good. Even if you go in expecting it to be good, you're not going to be disappointed like Bad News Bears. Like, you are going to enjoy this.
Even when parts of the ride are down, it is still amazing.
Which is something that, while I do think Rise of the Resistance in B mode is still worth it, I know when I took my mother on it for the first time, and I'm like, you're going to love this ride. You're going to love this ride. And I didn't tell her it was on B mode. But when we came around that corner and it was on B mode, and you don't get the Kylo Ren animatronic, he's on the spaceship, the TIE fighter outside of the Star Destroyer. And it's just like, I wanted to tell her, but I didn't want to tell her. I wanted to be like, no, it's even better than what you got to experience. So if it can be good in B mode, that is definitely an advantage for it. Here's what I'm going to say. I think we're both having...
And then I'll answer. I have to I'm having an existential crisis.
Well, because you're having an existential crisis, maybe we have to say Figment. Because if you can't definitively say yes, maybe the answer has to be no.
Okay, because some days there are rides that you go on, like Rise in regular mode, that it is mind blowing. Like I remember seeing Kylo Ren when we rode it, and I was just like, "What?" And there's times I go on Pirates, and I'm like, "This is the best experience ever." Or times I ride Haunted Mansion, and it's not the version I don't like. And I'm like, this is the best ride ever. So I'm going to have to say, because you just said that, I'm going to have to say Figment, as much as it breaks my heart because it is like one of my absolute favorite rides, that I'm going to have to say Figment right now. But like you said with Phantasmic, tomorrow it could be Fact.
And I think that is the perfect place to end things today. Sarah, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks. This was super fun.
This has been episode 136 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. If you're checking us out on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will be back next week with our other wonderful Sarah, continuing her string of questions about taking a vacation to Universal Orlando Resort for the first time since before the pandemic, a conversation we started last month. The Sarah Enigma will be on the show with even more of those questions. That will be next Thursday on Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Until then, have a great week.